I initially started based on my background and coming up as what I would call an underserved individual. Didn't have resources, grew up on welfare until a month after I left for the Air Force. The Air Force was my savior when I joined the Air Force in a month after I turned 19. But I never forgot the hardships that my mother went through as a single parent with 7 children. And especially for myself, having a medical problem, which was asthma, which at that time we did not know it was asthma. I was not diagnosed until I was in the Air Force. And then it was an aha moment for me. Oh, okay, that's why I couldn't breathe back then. And I had all these environmental hazards in our home that you shouldn't have as an asthmatic. I think it's important that you not forget your roots. And because of that, I could never let it go. And I wouldn't want anybody to go through what I went through or my mom went through, and especially that was in the 60s, in the very early 60s. I saw some of the struggle, and at this age, I still remember the struggle, and I can remember what she had to do. I have always been on that track of wanting to work with underserved population. And when I joined the Air Force, I became a medical service specialist. I had an opportunity to work at Howard University College of Medicine. There was a special program or research that had been done by the NIH looking at the problems of inner city children with asthma. And I was in graduate school when I found out about it. I felt that's what I wanted to focus on as my capstone project. And the thought came to, how about a free clinic for children with asthma? Fortunately, the timing was perfect, because it was the end of the research called the National Cooperative Inner City Asthma Study. And they were looking for what they called an asthma counselor. I was boldly threw my resume into that pot. I was selected for an interview. At this table sat 2 men. And I just asked them, who are you? And then one said, well, he laughed, told me his name. And then he said, and I have asthma. And he put his inhaler on the table. And then it was another gentleman in the room, Mr. Brown, Reggie Brown. Reggie said, and I have asthma. And then guess what? I had my inhaler in my pocket. And I pulled out my inhaler. And I said, and I have asthma. So what are we going to do about it? And then they stopped the interview. And he said, I don't need to go any further. You're who I want. And that is how it took off, allowing me to take my dream and kind of change what they wanted to do and bring something to Howard University College of Medicine. And I did that for about 9 or 10 years. During that time, though, it just grew and grew. And the reputation throughout DC and the Metro DC area and other parts of the country came with it, because no one was kind of doing it the way I was doing it. At one point, I felt I wanted to take it out of academia. I would never have left Howard University as long as Dr. Floyd Malveaux was there. He was the dean of the College of Medicine, and he and I had the same vision. And he had asthma, and he was just thrilled by what I was doing, because I took it far beyond what they had imagined it could be. And he went to what's called the Merck Childhood Asthma Network, and that is the nonprofit foundation side of Merck Pharmaceuticals. And I just said, well, you're taking me with you. You had to have the passion. You had to have everything that went along with doing this kind of work that was very hard. This was not about sitting in an office waiting for people to come to you. This was about getting out in the community. It was called Community Outreach for Asthma Care at Howard University. And I would take physicians out into neighborhoods nobody wanted to go into. Neighborhoods where I had to say, okay, I need your boys to protect me while I'm here. I'm coming in, type of thing. And they were places here in Southeast DC and places most people wouldn't go, but we were protected. And it even gave Dr. Malveaux, the researcher, a whole different perspective, working directly with the people and hearing these generations upon generations saying what they had to do and thinking if they drank warm ginger ale that would take away their problem. And we were able to introduce them to a whole new world of things, but it had to be a trust factor with it also. And the one thing, I was very fortunate, because I think I was able to say I had asthma, and I was able to say our child has asthma, and these are some things that we need to do. It seems that got them to trust me even more, because no matter what, and no matter what your socioeconomic status is, People remember the Tuskegee experiment. This was not research. This was based on taking an evidence-based intervention and putting it into the real world. You couldn't stay in your brick and mortar and wait for people to come to you. And you meet them where they are. I then developed the LLC because I was coming out of academia. And it actually first started off as Visionary Health Education Consulting Services, and that was in 2006. And then I changed it to Visionary Consulting Partners in 2008 as I asked my husband to join me. I'll never forget as he and I were walking through Burke Park here and saying where we wanted to go, how did we want to do it? And I turned to him and asked him if he would join me. That was a huge step because that was in 2008, and that was the recession. And we must have been crazy to give up that income. We were like, oh Lord, what did we do? But we did it, and we did it as a team because his capabilities, his areas of expertise blended perfectly with my side on the clinical side and the public health side. The rest is kind of history. Asthma is one of the things that was my challenge, and it was adversity and whatnot, but became an opportunity for us to do good work. And you see how you can change something that has been a challenge and has been your nemesis and all of those things and turn it into something good if you don't forget about it. And I never forgot about it. Our tagline is promoting optimal health, transforming lives. And no matter what we do, that stays up front and out there. And I make sure everybody on the team understands that and knows that. And it's no sense for someone to die from asthma, but you do have a lot of the inner city population that are hospitalized more. The Black African-American children are hospitalized more. The Latino children are hospitalized more than the Caucasian children, and just face so many adverse events. And then didn't have people to really understand their environment and their situation. And in healthcare overall, I think that's one of the things we still miss is listening to the patient and understanding what their environment is. If we work with the patient, then we can make it doable in some way. Because this was a free service. You know, people felt better when they were giving me something. So I started charging them $1. And I just rolled it back in the program to buy things for them, you know, because sometimes they came in and they were hungry. So I made sure that I had fresh things, apples, bananas, when I noticed they were coming in with potato chips and pickles at 8 o'clock in the morning and things of that nature. And that might be all they had. And then I took it from just children to adults. Didn't matter what the socioeconomic status was. I had PhDs in that program. I had just people that was falling between that gap and could not get the care that they needed. And think about it, that's just for asthma. What about the other things that go along with that? One of the worst things that happened to the country was one of the best things that happened to me. And adversity, I turned it to an opportunity. It was Hurricane Katrina. And Louisiana has a known history at the high level of prevalence of asthma there. And so we wanted to see if we could take what we did in DC and put it into a place post-disaster, which was a huge challenge. But it took me being on the ground, kind of just living in New Orleans for a while, working with Tulane, LSU, and all of the other folks. And that's a whole nother baby that I can't even go into this. But let me just say, we took it to New Orleans, and I wound up living in New Orleans for about 5 years out of a hotel, coming home ever so often to repack and whatnot. So you can imagine the devastation. And that's really how visionaries really just went wham. Some of the lessons I've learned, if you want to go into business, is first and foremost, if it can be a passion of yours, it'll never get old. And it'll keep you going when you're going through some of the roughest patches in a business, because you're gonna hit some rough patches. When I first started, I was like, oh, wait, okay, I didn't think about negotiating rates. What is your worth? Remember what your worth is. If you don't value yourself, nobody else is going to value you. To be successful and continue to be successful, if you're just grabbing for the money. Now, money is important. That's why you have a business. When you're starting a business also, to make sure you're starting it and you're getting with the right partners. And you want to make sure that you are working with someone that is kind of on the same platform that you're on, have the same visions and understandings that you have on something, or it's going to become unbalanced. You could do a lot of great talking and whatnot, but then when the rubber hits the road and money is involved, you find out differently. For women, and I'm not saying men don't have this, but we have some kind of a gut. We have that inner intuition or whatever you want to call it. Go with your gut. Sometimes you can explain why you want to do something, and then sometimes you can't, and you just have to say, trust me, it's my gut. And it's funny being the female CEO, when I say that to all these males in the company, they're like, what? I was like, just trust me. Because people, when they see a moving train is moving and looks like it's moving really smoothly and got some things going on, and guess what? Everybody wants to be on board that train. But you don't want all those passengers. Sometimes it's not the right passenger, or sometimes it's just not the right partner for you for a number of reasons, even though it might look pretty lucrative. Don't chase the money. Money is important, and it will come when you're doing the right thing. Remember that rearview mirror, take the lessons learned, but it ain't gonna do you much good if you don't take those lessons learned and then look at that big window in front of you and move forward. What do I think about Women's History Month? I think that's a really loaded question because all kind of things come into it. When you racism and equities, equality, all of those things. It's not just what women experience, it's what we experience overall, especially if you are a person of color. I say, why do we even have to have a Women's History Month? To be quite honest with you, if it wasn't for women, where would we be? We are the founders. And it's to my dismay that we even have to have a Women's History Month, a Native American month, an African American month. To me, that tells you what we've had to do and how far we still have to work to put this in front, that we are all should be on the same level and the same playing ground. But we are not. We are not when it comes to health. It is well documented that a white male going into the ER with chest pains may get a different protocol or different medication than maybe a Black male, same age, maybe a different socioeconomic status, might not get the same treatment. Those things are true. They are real. Any insight I have in sitting on boards and things of that nature, that I make sure that those things are right up front. We are now looking at the first African American female nominated for the Supreme Court Justice. I think good. It's long overdue. As everybody is applauding, and I applauded also, I said, should have been there a long, long time ago. But I'm going to applaud where we are now and hope that we move forward. It's just an everyday news. I think within the last maybe 5 or 10 years, with so much happening, some of the racial discord in our country, we are now recognizing that people are a little bit more alert. From the business aspect of this, for me, it was very interesting when I first started, when we walked into a room, and typically the room was full of white males. They automatically assumed Mike Sr. was the president and CEO of the company. I don't get that anymore, not like it was in the beginning. And that had to be corrected very quickly, and it let me know who really did their homework. Right away, I was at a disadvantage. I'm a person of a small stature. I'm barely 5'1". Mike Sr. is probably 6 feet. I just think because he was the male and bigger, and everything, they just made the assumption that he was the president and CEO, but that was corrected very quickly. And I think maybe the first time it was intimidating, and then it was not an intimidation anymore. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I think just being a female overall, an African-American female, I had already run into that so many times in other situations. But unfortunately, females, no matter what race they are, some may feel intimidated, because I have talked to some and they asked me, how did I handle that? And I said, you have to believe in yourself, know your purpose, and go in there and get down to business. I don't want females to walk in and feel like they have to prove anything. That's what I would like to say to female owners. Whatever your position is in that company, own it. Own it. And when you own it, that comes across very clearly. When I think about mentors or people who have inspired me, I'm going to start within my family. And one was my grandmother. coming up in grade school and high school, I never had a teacher or counselor tell me I can be this or I can be that or anything. But she was the one that always told me I was smart as a whip, just smart as a whip, she would say. And she had some college education, but she was called a matron or a janitor in the elementary school that I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago. And I would stay after school with her to help her clean up school. And that's how I would get extra pencils, extra paper. And if there was some leftover milk from the day, things of that nature. With that. So if I think of one woman, because she told me, she would just say I was smart, but nobody else told me I was smart. I never had a counselor sit down with me or anything. Think about the time period we're talking about now, okay, to tell me any of those things. And when I joined the Air Force, she did inspire me because when I tried to join the Air Force, I didn't weigh enough. And so she had to make meals to try to fatten me up and whatnot. I was so underweight. Inspiration comes in a lot of ways. My sisters also, I'm gonna be quite honest, my sisters were brutal. I came in a family with 6 girls. Thank God they were, because they just prepared me for the real world. Okay. You know, if they see this, yes, you guys were brutal. Okay. But I thank you. I thank my mother who inspired me. You know who my true inspirations are also? The families that I work with, the hardships that they go through, that I don't know if I could go through it. But then my sisters try to say to me, I remember, Ellie, we did go through that. That was us back then. And I just said, you're right, that was us. The thing that truly inspires me and keeps me going is where you can really see the difference you can make in a person's life if you listen to what they say their needs are, their concerns are, and you're not judgmental, and you can find a way. I don't believe in just handing things to anyone. I believe in empowering and building capacity wherever we go. My husband inspires me because he always tell me, you can do that. And Mr. Donald Delasky, who believed in me and just said, forget all those other applicants. I want this person, even though that she is not the master's level social worker, she has this experience, and funded me throughout and believed in everything that I can do. And he was the inspiration for me to always take someone and inspire them. So I believe in always pulling a female up with you. And I think that's really important, because if we don't do it, who's going to do it? MEC Fairfax has provided invaluable resources for us. I was very fortunate that I was kind of known already, didn't have to do a lot of the big marketing to stay in the niche we were in, but we wanted to expand the niche also. So giving us some marketing advice, the importance of the socioeconomic designation, lift your company, the number of speakers they have come in. That's always very interesting for you to learn things about. I think our first accountant, maybe even our second accountant, we might have gotten through the Mason Enterprise Center. You have to have someone who understands small businesses, and then you have to have someone that understands government contracting, if that's your area. And it was great being there, where all you had to do is walk next door or walk downstairs or somewhere to know that you had a resource there. And I think it took a while for most people to understand what the value of that center was, but we saw it really fast. Don't know where we would be without them. Grateful to have them, and want more people to understand that they are there for you and are really there on your side, or someone that you can look at as a trusted partner. And that's really important. And they have certainly been a trusted partner with Visionary Consulting Partners.